to TCNJ alum, Tammy Tibbetts.
Congratulations, class of 2017. Showing up today. I heard you had a late night. I'm very honored to be a part of your graduation festivities. I know this is a really special moment that you've worked very hard to achieve. I love graduations, and I'm sure that you're beyond excited for yours. But maybe you're also a little anxious or a little sad to say goodbye to this campus. And that's completely
understandable. Whoa, what was that? I was saying that's completely understandable. But I don't want you to worry. I want you to imagine that the 31-year-old version of yourself just showed up to tell you that everything is going to be okay. In fact, it's going to be more than okay. It's going to be awesome. 10 years ago, I was sitting exactly where you are right now. That means when I was getting ready to put on my cap and gown, you were all awkward 7th graders. And look at you now, confident, accomplished, employable adults ready to take on the world. I consider it my duty today to get you even more excited for the decade that's ahead. I want to tell you what I think 21-year-old Tammy would have loved to hear. So far, my career after TCNJ has taken me far beyond my wildest dreams. I went from being a journalism major to raising $4 million for a nonprofit that I founded. I never got around to taking a business class here, so I didn't see that one coming. I went from working at 17 magazine to working on the front lines of a movement for gender equality. Who knew that my minor in women's and gender studies would become the major focus of my life? I never guessed 10 years ago that my life would grow in this way. But when I look back, I see that all the seeds were planted right here at TCNJ. She's the First isn't just the name of the nonprofit that I founded. It's part of my identity that's tied to this campus, because I'm the first in my family to graduate from college. Are any of you going to be firsts tomorrow? Yes. Cheers for you. Congratulations. Or maybe you're going to be the first in your family to major in biology or interactive multimedia or engineering, you name it. Maybe you were the first in your family to study abroad. Or maybe you're going to be the first to do something in your future and we just don't know what that is yet. I really believe that everyone is a trailblazer in his or her own way. As I look back on the last 10 years, 4 big mantras jumped out at me. So I'm going to use these mantras as if they were boxes. And I'm going to pack some stories into them to make them memorable, and then I'll hand them over to you. They're your box of tricks, and you can unpack them whenever you need. Sound good? All right, here we go. As a college graduate, people are going to expect a lot of you, and maybe you can already feel that pressure. It makes sense why the expectations would be so high, because college is a big investment. But with a senior class this accomplished, I'm not worried about you guys. I'm sure that you'll meet and even exceed the expectations that people have for you. It will take hard work, but you've got this. Here's mantra number 1. While you're so focused on meeting expectations, be alert to the times when you need to defy expectations. It was during my freshman year at TCNJ that I learned the power of this. In high school, you know how they do those superlatives in the yearbook? Most likely to succeed, most likely to be president, best smile, all that great stuff. I see heads nodding. Well, you're looking at the one who was voted most shy in her high school class. Yep. And when I came to the College of New Jersey, I was over it. There would be no more shy girl here. I was determined to defy the expectations that my classmates at home had had of me. They expected me to be the quiet girl who was on the sidelines and not raising her hand. And to be honest, that was the kind of girl I had always been. So freshman year, I challenged myself to run for freshman class secretary. I had to knock on the doors of Travers and Wolf and gather signatures for my petition. I had to print out Vote for Tammy flyers and put them up on all the bulletin boards across the dorms. And then ultimately, I had to give a speech. That was my first real public speaking moment. And I don't remember what I said, but I remember the butterflies that I had, and I remember this little nervous shake in my leg, and I remember holding my cards in my sweaty palms. I lost that election, but it ended up being one of my biggest victories. I proved to myself that I could stand up and speak up. And once I knew I could do that, I was able to raise my hand in the classroom. I was able to lead extracurricular activities. I was vocal in my internships. And that led me all the way to being the activist that I am today for girls' education. When have you had to defy expectations? Think back to a time and hang on to that fire and that determination that you had. Ladies, you may go on to work in an environment where women are expected to be agreeable. So defy expectations and negotiate for the salaries that you deserve. Guys, you may work in an environment where men are expected to climb over others to get to the top. So defy expectations and take a more collaborative approach. Never has our country needed a more defiant class of graduates. Am I right? In all aspects of your life, refuse to accept what is not equal, not just, or not truthful. And if people think you are not powerful enough to make a change, then show them otherwise. No one has taught me more what it means to defy expectations than the 881 She's the First scholars around the world. They are young women who have received scholarships through our program so that they can be the first in their families to graduate from high school. Every day, across 11 different countries in Africa, Asia, and Central America, these scholars are pushing ahead. So if you're struggling to do the right thing and need some courage, I want you to think of Maheshwari. She's also a member of the class of 2017. She's getting her master's in genetics this May. We watched her graduate from high school in India 5 years ago. She was born into the untouchable caste. So she's not only the first woman in her family to be educated, but she's one of the very, very few Dalit women to wear a lab coat. Ellie is the youngest of 9 siblings in Tanzania, and yet she's the first and only one of them to graduate from high school. The job market in Tanzania doesn't have much to offer her, so she's starting her own business while she's in university. Angelica is graduating this October in Guatemala. She was born to parents who each speak a different indigenous language. Neither one of them can speak Spanish or English. Angelica, however, speaks all 4 of those languages, and she's learning her 5th, so she can help them all break out of poverty. Saint Farosa, who's on the right, was born up in the Andes Mountains in Peru. She would have been like most other girls in her community, and dropped out after elementary school, because the nearest high school is a 7-hour trip from where her family lives. But because she received a scholarship to boarding school in a more populated town, she was able to beat the odds and graduate from high school last year. And finally, here's Sirjana. In Nepal, where she's from, culturally, women aren't expected to show dominance or aggression. So when Sirjana brings out her competitive drive on the soccer field, where she's a star player, she will not back down from getting that ball back in her command. She is defying expectations. Remember that your actions will define who you are, and no one else will. I learned all about mantra number 2 from She's the First. On this box, I would write, ponder your purpose. Your purpose is the reason that you're on this planet. And this is a really heavy box to think about, especially at a time when you've just finished your finals and are ready to party. But it's a really rewarding one, so we're going to talk about it. Doesn't it seem like you talk more about your passion than your purpose? Until recently, I remembered my senior year here as being the year of chasing my passion for magazines. To get that dream job, I was obsessed. I subscribed to so many women's magazines, and I could pore over the magazine racks at Barnes & Noble for hours, just studying the mastheads and seeing who had what jobs that I wanted. I even started a magazine club here on campus. But then, a couple years ago, at home I came across my diary from that time, and it reminded me how my purpose had actually been hiding out behind the passion all along. I had forgotten that while I had wanted that glamorous magazine job as badly as Andy Sachs had wanted it in The Devil Wears Prada, I knew it wasn't the end-all, be-all. So I'm going to tell you what I wrote in that diary. And by the way, for me to share my diary with all of you who I really haven't met shows you how much I already like you as almost fellow alumni. So I wrote this in a brand new journal that my supervisor had gifted me at the end of my summer internship. And I wrote this just as I was moving back to campus for senior year in August of 2006. This journal is just what I needed, a fresh start to release all the anxieties that are creeping in on me senior year. I know exciting times are on the way, but I'm afraid of losing a good opportunity or of growing up too fast. It may be because I've had too much time to think and overanalyze lately. I have a fear of falling into the real world too fast, of being pigeonholed, of not knowing where I'll end up in May. My hope for senior year is that I'll find a way to make a difference firsthand, to do a meaningful volunteer project, to never take being 20 for granted, and to never stop shifting around outside of my comfort zone. I hope you can read back on this in May and say, "You did it, Tammy. You made me proud." Okay, so that is super, super cheesy, I will admit that. But I'm hoping that somewhere inside of you, you're like, yeah, I wrote stuff like that in my diary too. Cheese aside, these words really are true to who I am from when I was 20 up until the present. But what did I do besides write in my diary that I was looking for purpose? Well, I talked to my professor, Professor Pearson, in the journalism department. I don't know if any of you know her, but I know she's watching on Facebook Live now, so hi, Professor Pearson. I was doing an independent study with her during my final semester of senior year. And I told her I wanted to report a story about a woman who was changing the world, a woman who had overcome adversity to create a change in her community, a story that most people wouldn't have heard of but should know about because they would be inspired to support. This moment ended up being the seed for all that was to come. Professor Pearson suggested I write a story about one of her former students, so also a TCNJ alum, who had been a refugee of the Liberian Civil War. And at that time, she was leading a foundation to educate Liberian girls and boys. So that's what I did. This woman was living in New York City, and after my internship, I would go and interview her. I so intensely learned about the problems in Liberia and girls' need for an education that after turning in this assignment, getting my A+, getting my cap and gown, I just couldn't shake it. I couldn't shake the fact that 50 million girls around the world were denied a high school education. And I couldn't accept that young women who were my age at the time were already mothers, they weren't able to graduate, and they had no control over their futures. So after I graduated, I volunteered my writing and my leadership skills to her foundation. It was the best I could do. I couldn't write a big check, so I offered my time. I didn't want to work at a nonprofit. I knew that the magazine world was still what excited me, and that I could use media as a powerful platform to support philanthropy. But in my free time, I wanted to do everything I could to help this little organization that didn't have a staff. So I helped them organize their galas, I started their Facebook page, I wrote thank you notes to donors, you name it. Turns out that was exactly what I was looking for in that August 2006 diary entry, a chance to make a difference firsthand. This never would have happened if I hadn't put what I was looking for out into the universe, by writing to myself in my diary, by talking to Professor Pearson. Even if your purpose feels kind of vague, give yourself the space and the time to think and talk about it. Tell people what lights you up. Maybe it's stopping climate change, protecting women's reproductive rights, fighting racial injustice. Or maybe you're not even sure what issue pulls on your heart the most, but you know you want to be part of a movement. You know you want to leave the world in a better place than when you found it. So ponder your purpose. It's the surest way to find it. Building on this story, my third box says, say yes. This box is light and easy to pick up and toss around. Because inside, there's a story about giving unexpected opportunities a chance. It's light because when you're at the start of your career, you don't have much to lose. Now, don't take this advice too literally. I'm not asking you to forfeit all discretion, but I am asking you to consider invitations that weren't what you were expecting, but have something to offer you. So here's an example from my own life. I mentioned that after graduation, I landed my dream job at a fancy publishing company, Hearst Magazines. I was so proud of that, and I still am. Hearst is in my Twitter bio as one of my alma maters because I learned as much there as I did here at TCNJ. Ultimately, I wanted to be covering important feminist issues for a magazine like Marie Claire or Glamour. I started out as the assistant to the director of digital media for Hearst, and that was an awesome job because it gave me a bird's eye view of the industry at a very innovative time. After a few months on the job, my boss asked me if I would be interested in a new opportunity to be a web editor. That would make me the youngest web editor in the company. He asked me if I would like to edit the websites for Quinceañera and Prom, the sister sites for 17, Cosmo Girl, and Teen. Well, I'm not Latina, so I haven't had a quinceañera, and truth be told, I never went to my high school prom, nor any college formal. But he didn't ask if I had, so I just didn't tell him. I said, yes, I want that job. That job was my entryway into working with big brands like 17 that were reaching millions of young women. And although the door was bedazzled with sequins and sparkles of prom dresses, when I was looking for a door that was more gritty, it was still a door leading me closer to my goal. And it ended up being exactly the right door for me. Managing those tiny websites was a crash course in entrepreneurship. I worked with web designers, developers, the marketing and advertising side. I managed freelance writers. I produced video content. I did it all in building those brands. The next year on the job, my boss asked me if I would like to launch a new media campaign called DonateMyDress.org. And that would be an online directory of places that women who had formal dresses in their closets that they would never wear again could drop them off, and then girls in financial need who couldn't afford a dress for prom could go there to pick them up. So of course, I said yes to that again. I was so hungry for a project with social impact that would change someone's life, even if it was just through a dress. If my college reporting on Liberia had been what planted the seeds, then this is when everything started to sprout. Donate My Dress set off an aha moment in my head that led me to where I am today. So the experience that I was gaining in my day job in digital media started to mix with the education issues that I was facing in my volunteer time when I was helping that organization that I wrote about in Liberia. I wondered, what would happen if there was a media campaign like Donate My Dress for girls' education, so that people could go and see where they could donate to provide a scholarship to a girl who would never be able to go to school otherwise. I knew that when a girl was the first in her family to graduate, she could break the cycle of poverty. And that's when the idea for She's the First hit me. So I launched it in 2009, just as a YouTube video, because I wanted to reach my peers, our generation, with the message. All it took, that first step, was hitting upload on YouTube. I had no idea then that it would receive a response strong enough to catapult it into the global nonprofit that it is today. Looking back, I can see very clearly that there's a clear line from TCNJ to my work in Liberia to Hearst, and then how Donate My Dress led me to She's the First. But it wasn't like that at the time. At the time, each new door was just an opportunity, and I was scared and nervous and uncertain about how exactly it would all pan out. But I worked hard, I shared what I was passionate about with others, and I was ready for those opportunities when they showed up. Ultimately, that's how I got where I am today. So as you're looking for your first job, if you don't have it already, don't be discouraged if the first big role that you get isn't what you thought it was going to be. You'll be surprised to find what big opportunities and valuable skill sets are hiding in roles that don't seem very profound at first glance. So just say yes. Okay, box number 4. We've made it to the final one in my metaphor here, and it's got my favorite mantra inside. This box is golden, and it's engraved with the words, "Pay it forward." Despite what you may read, no one really does anything on their own. Behind every successful person is a team. We all have them. We all have people in our lives who help us become the best version of ourselves. Sometimes in big ways, sometimes in smaller ways, but no less important. Hopefully you'll be surrounded by those people tomorrow at graduation. My dad is one of those people. He drove me to campus the first time 15 years ago, and he drove me here today. He's sitting right there in the front row. His hard work, as you heard in the Today Show piece, made it possible for me to be a first-generation college student. My professors in the School of Journalism and Professional Writing, especially Professor Pearson, are definitely on my team. They all brought me to the path that led to She's the First. So box number 4 isn't really advice so much as a thank you. It's a thank you to the people who helped me, and it's a thank you to you, the class of 2017. If any of you, at any point in your college career, had a tie-dye cupcake that was sold by the TCNJ chapter of She's the First, I'm hoping that you have, because they're delicious. If you went to their Zumbathons or their documentary screenings, then you've already taken a small action to pay it forward. Your senior leaders, who are Devin Tam, Allison McCarthy, Samantha Selikoff, they made the TCNJ chapter of She's the First one of the strongest in the nation. During your time here, the chapter has made a real difference to people around the world, raising about $4,000 to support the education of girls. Here's one of the lives that you've impacted. This is Kavita in Nepal. She won't be graduating until the year 2024, but every year she's gotten a step closer thanks to you. She's doing well in her classes, and just like you did, she's involved in extracurricular activities like swimming and art that grow her mind in other ways. She also has access to good nutrition at school, so her body and mind is stronger than it would have been if she just had the meals that were available at home. These opportunities were made possible by your support, and in some cases, that was just one cupcake at a time. It doesn't take much to pay it forward. All I ask is that you continue in that spirit. Lift others up, globally and locally. Down the line, reach back to this campus and pull up younger students with you. Make TCNJ alumni a force to be reckoned with in this world. So remember to defy expectations, ponder a purpose, say yes, and pay it forward. Seniors, thank you so much for having me, and I'll see you on the other side.